I would say that as long as you're at a weight that's not harming your health either physically or mentally, you're not eating in such a way that you're just, hurting yourself physically. I'd like to think that it doesn't matter, but, I'm not naive. I know that we are judged on it. I'd like to see that changed. But the piece that I was brought up this up about how my weight kept me with an abusive boyfriend, I was writing about how the idea that women are judged negatively for being overweight was actually used as leverage against me. And not because I was overweight at the time I was dating this man, and he never said I was overweight. He thought I was beautiful. He never implied that I should lose weight, nothing like that. But I was expected to be thankful that he loved me even though I was overweight. And to a certain degree, I was thankful. And so that sort of supplied this leverage to keep me in an unhealthy situation, because I was like, well, is someone else going to find me attractive? Which was ridiculous. I dated plenty of people before who never had a word to say about my weight. But we have this idea that it's the worst thing that can happen to a woman is that she's fat. And I think that if that were lessened, that idea were lessened, that I would not have stayed with him as long as I did. As far as if fear keeps us in negative situations, I mean, there's sort of this duality to fear. It certainly can keep us in a negative situation, but it can also propel us out of it. Fear often goes hand in hand with the literal life-saving instinct. You hear those stories of mothers lifting cars because their child is trapped underneath it. And that's partly driven by a very basic kind of fear. And there's also a sort of lower level, but in some ways deeper fear that can propel us out of negative situations. And that's what happened with me. With my ex-boyfriend, I suddenly realized that if I didn't leave him, I might never leave him, and that fear of spending the rest of my life with this person got me out of there after 4.5 years. I think fear kept me in my abusive relationship in a couple of ways. Part of it was, a lot of abusive relationships, there's a genuine fear that the person might hurt you worse if you leave. I was a little bit worried about that, but I wouldn't say that was my primary fear. My primary fear was that I would suddenly not be able to ever have a relationship again, either because he had damaged me so much or because I just wouldn't ever really recover. So my own internal fears, I think, were a bigger factor than any sort of external fear.
There are two motivations for everything we do: love or fear. If we look at something from a fearful perspective, the outcome will be negative. If we look at something from a loving perspective, the outcome will be positive. Fear, like stress, is toxic and doesn't serve a useful purpose.
Yes, I strongly believe that fear can keep us in negative situations because fear is paralyzing, and when you are paralyzed, you cannot move. There are so many different types of abusive relationships, and in the one I was in, my biggest fear, there were a few things. My biggest fear was that he would physically harm me because he was physically abusive. So I would have like these nightmares of him choking me or chasing me and stabbing me and killing me, and there was so much anger inside of him a lot of the times that I feared saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. And then my next fear was that I was blind and I had a child, and well, who would want that? He had me convinced that I was the luckiest girl on earth being with him. And My other fear was that my daughter would be mad at me if I left her father. And I stayed for a very long time, very unhappy. Spent a lot of that time heartbroken. And I feel as if I've missed out on a lot of opportunities. But everything happens for a reason, and in the time that it happens, and I am where I am in my life right now. And if that's what I needed to go through to get here, then that is what it is. But counseling helped me. Marriage counseling was supposed to fix our problem. But it didn't fix our problem. Our problems were too big. But it did fix me in a lot of ways. And then after I had him leave our home, I went to adjustment counseling for the new life, and I worked through the grieving process of my marriage. And, and then the fear went away, and I was able to go out and do some pretty cool stuff and continue to do, I think, good things. So I'm not so restrained and not at all paralyzed anymore.
Well, a prime example of fear being a negative situation is if you're afraid to cross the street, and walking across the street, then you're never going to be able to do it. You're going to be negative about it all the time. So in a way, I think fear can be a negative thing.
Hi there. This is a very interesting question. I suffer from some anxiety attacks, and life has not always been easy. I have not felt that I've had a lot of positive support when I was a child and when I was growing up, so now I have to do a lot of stuff on my own. And, I have always been a very rational person, and now I have to get a bit more into my, how do you put that? That sounds very, I don't know, but into my feelings. And fear has always been a big part of life for me. And I do think that fear can keep you in negative situations. I'm sorry. Because when you are afraid a lot, it's difficult to... So much is then difficult. It's difficult to hope for better things, to trust, to, try to get out there, expose yourself. Although that might be the better option, it always takes a lot of energy to get over that fear and to, get into new things, to expose yourself. So yes, I do think fear can certainly keep you in negative situations. And there are ways to get out of it, and I am doing that, but it does cost a lot. It does not come easy.